but I'm on record as saying that the current regime has seen us go one step forward and two step back.
What we're not doing as a country is we're not gearing ourselves up to be a trading nation.
Yeah.
We cannot keep passing the same 100 Rand around, guys. It's the same 100 Rand.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Defining Conversations. In this episode of this election series, we'll be talking about gender-based violence, voter education, and other things related to policymakers and all the people fighting for that big seat. Let's meet today's panel.
My name is Zimasa Vabaza. I am a socioeconomic commentator. I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm a nerd who sometimes creates videos online.
Hi everyone, I'm Ayanda Allie. I am a candidate for Parliament and Provincial Legislature under the banner of Build One South Africa. I like to describe myself as an artist, as an articulator, and an activist.
Lovely.
And my name is Bongani, the proudly South African guy, a risk taker, a believer of a successful nation, a dreamer by night and shiver by day, and that's on period.
Okay, so guys, let's get straight into it. I think that the best question to start off with is, do you guys think democracy is working? Do you guys think that the last couple of years have shown any kind of improvement since the 2019 elections? What is your opinion on that?
Maybe let me jump in a little bit early. No, I don't think it's working. But I also don't want to base it on the last couple of years. I want us to take a full view. And there's a very interesting, I was having a conversation with a friend, and one of the things that they put quite nicely was that there was 15 years and 15 years. And in the 30 years, you've got to look at the first half and the second half. And then you've got to ask yourself, did we win enough in the first half for this second half to not hurt as much as it has to people, right? And for me, I believe that the project of democracy was very important at the dawn of democracy. It was super important. Like, we had to be part of this thing, and it felt good. Then the work had to start, right? And then when the work starts, the democracy thing needs to fall a little bit back, and we need to get things done. Because if you go ask people on the street if democracy works for them, they'll say no, because I don't see anything. Now, then the other side of it becomes, well, then what do we do? I feel like we have not put enough, we have not put enough carrots in front of the people that have to do work. Because, and this is very contentious for a lot of people, because we haven't given politicians enough of a carrot. But there's always a stick, and the stick is the social bang, 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 let's hit you, you haven't done this, etc. But for the people that are doing well in government, if you were in corporate, you would have been given bonuses, vested shares, etc. We don't do that, because we expect people, for the money that they're being paid, to do the right thing democratically, because we've put you there, we've given you a mandate, and it doesn't work like that. This is real life. So for me, I say democracy, no, it doesn't work, because it's on a piece of paper, but in reality, the words of the democracy coming out of that page into real life are not translating.
I don't know. I may sound like I'm sitting on the fence on this one, but I would say yes and no. Okay. We were speaking off air about the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, GFIB, under which we saw the likes of your e-tolls. And that can show you that democracy does work. You know, government brought in an intervention that people were clearly not happy about because of a lack of consultation and a number of other issues. We saw organizations that were formed as a result of that, outer, that have since gone on to focus on other civil issues. We saw ordinary people along the color spectrum, black, white, colored, Indian, you name it, take to the streets and take to other platforms like legal avenues and the like to contest this intervention by the state. It may have taken a couple of years and billions of dollars down the line, but ultimately the will of the people prevailed, and GFIB and the manifestation thereof in the form of e-tolls was scrapped. But the flip side of the coin is that far too many people are still on the periphery of this democracy. For the fact that you have to have people protest and demonstrate and burn things and loot to have their voices heard tells you that they don't feel that the correct avenues through which to raise their concerns are working for them. By the time someone is burning down a building, it tells you that they are so frustrated that they are not able to express themselves, and they've resorted to this. And that says there's a failure in the system. And I also think it's important that while we do, blame government for a lack of civic education, a lack of really bringing people people in and informing them of their rights and responsibilities, and a lack of really educating people right from school level of the various avenues that they can use and exhaust in order to raise their grievances. But the onus is also on us. It's on us as society, it's on us as civil organizations to say, how do we empower ourselves and how do we make sure that we don't leave politics to politicians? You know, as long as we're still saying they must do 1, 2, and 3, or they should do 1, 2, and 3, that's where the problem is. Until or unless you have people who are running for office, who are in academia, who are in the healthcare sector, who are in the legal fraternity, who are your community policing forum. Nobody knows a community like I'm a patrol. So until you have your patroller saying, I'm going to sign up as an independent candidate in these national elections or even in the 2026 elections, then we're always going to have these problems. So I would say, yes, it does work, especially in black and white, as you've said, but we have seen instances where resources are available, financial and otherwise, it will work. But those who are on the sidelines, who are on the margin and the periphery, who feel like there's no money and other avenues for them to really raise their concerns, they end up, looting, burning, etc. Then the onus is also on us to educate ourselves and to also take back the power from the politicians.
Or it could be bureaucracy.
Also, a lot of red tape. Yeah.
So for me, I believe there has been a big improvement, guys, and I don't want to lie. I want to scale it to a point where, like the TRC began, like how things have improved from the beginning. I just don't want to scale it to the problems that we're facing now, but looking back on the 30 years that we've been like having in general, running through the ANC, right? And it's a simple things that people I know sometimes they don't take into consideration, but taking a school kid to a free like education, as much as it's not there yet on the tertiary level, but it has started on the primary and the secondary school. So for me, that is a huge improvement, because one thing for sure that we need is education, and that's what people take for granted, that if you don't educate the kid, obviously now we are getting smarter on how to educate our kids. But however, the fact that there is free education there, the fact that some of the people have the opportunity just to go to school without having to pay a school fees, not having that as a boundary, I think that's a big improvement. And the second thing, of which I know it's a bit of a debate, but having things like SASSA grants and all the grants available just to help the process adjusting to it. As much as we coming from an oppression era, if you're counting the 30 years, people need to adjust into the mind of saying we need to move away from getting free things. However, the fact that those things have been there and now having to see them in action, people receiving those grants, I think for me, it's quite a huge improvement and trying to address the issues that we've had in the past. And the fact that now, 30 years, counting that in, that's a whole grown adult, right? And the thing is, adulting is not easy.
It's not.
Right? I put that on a human being because that's how a country should be. It's supposed to be. Learning how to do those things. When you're in your 30s, you're still figuring things out. Where do I go? My friends are there. Like everyone, now you start to see what are your other peers doing. And now that's where we are as a country. We're starting to see what other countries are doing. And now we are starting to apply that to ourselves. Like, actually, we need to put more into this and that and that. So for me, that's what
I want to differ. I want to differ.
I also want to
I want to differ because firstly, let's agree that things are not the same as they were under apartheid. I think that's a given.
But are we going to use that as the marker
as a
for whether or
benchmark,
not
right?
democracy is
So
working?
that's a given, and there have been some improvements. But I'm on record as saying that the current regime has seen us go one step forward and two step back. But I don't want to say it that way. I'll use a different analogy and saying it's like drinking a cheap counterfeit oros. Where are you thirsty? Yes. Is this drink quenching your thirst? Yes. But the aftertaste just lingers here and creates even more problems for you. So you do have fee-free education and you do have meals that are provided in those schools, especially your lower quintile schools. But at the same time, you'll see bana baja soya or kiki, just one.
It's not nutritional.
It's not a well-balanced nutritional meal, number one. And somebody has pocketed millions of rands, right? Because of the whole culture, bling bling and the tenderpreneurs and the culture of looting more than giving and serving. And then you do find the quality of education, even in those schools, leaves much to be desired, to the point where even the principal of that school will not send their child to that school. If you as a headmaster cannot send your child to the school where you're teaching, there's already a problem. You know something is wrong. And then when it comes to the grant system, I agree with you fully. I think all of us in this room know someone who is benefiting from the grant system. It is a very good intervention. It's a good stopgap measure. But unfortunately, in this country, it's created a dependency syndrome. We've not empowered people. We've not given them skills. We've not given them jobs. We've not helped them to get out of that system, to the point where if we continue at this rate, 30 years from now, we'll still be giving away RDPs. We'll still be giving away. And I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying it's good. It's a stopgap because of our past. We have to intervene. But we're not thinking past the grants. How are you empowering? How are you creating jobs? How are you creating job creators and entrepreneurs? And that's where I'm saying, aftertaste.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that you were talking about having a carrot, in front of these politicians, some kind of motivation.
No, in front of the bureaucrats. Bureaucrats, the people that are actually running things.
Yes. So my question is, what should this carrot be? Because you signed up for the job knowing what's expected.
Performance.
And I think my primary issue with that is that if we look at these people who govern our country, their pockets are well lined.
Have you ever seen...
They are well lined. So we can't say that the money that they have is not motivating them to produce or perform in the way that we expect them to as the people that we voted into power, right?
No. So let me tell you why.
Why?
Have you ever heard of a performance contract for a minister? Let's start at ministerial level. I'm going to keep going down. Have you ever heard of a performance contract?
No.
Is that what you're seeking? That what you're seeking?
Can it be clear what your job is?
And
Like you think people have clear jobs until you realize that everyone is freestyling, right?
Yes.
That's one.
Yeah.
Two, most of the parastatal CEOs, what is your performance contract? Performance.
Isn't that aligned to your director general within the department?
What is the direct? Have you ever heard of a director general being put to task for not hitting targets? What are those targets? This is the guys in this country, and we're having the conversation outside. We as normal South Africans, as civic society, do not read annual reports.
True.
So we can't have a conversation where you say they have enough money. My view is this: there are random SOEs that are doing so well, and those people are not being rewarded. They're not being rewarded, but there are people who are eating money, right?
Yeah, and
They're also not being rewarded, but they're eating. So in a way, they're being rewarded. So now you, as the person who's the lone wolf, who's not eating and doing your job, there's nothing that says that you've done well by hitting all your projects, hitting all your marks, making sure all your projects are done.
So basically, there needs to be a system of accountability set up. There needs to be a reporting system for their performance.
It exists in theory.
Yes.
So even the president says, no, I'm going to measure the performance of each minister, etc. Then we don't know what it is. He doesn't bring us. He doesn't take us into
what is he signing? What are they signing?
They're signing, but nobody knows what it is they're signing. And equally, nobody comes back and gives the report. At the end of the year, there's a report.
Everybody at work, everybody gets it.
Exactly.
You get a praise.
Only media have those things where they say, now we're going to score the ministers, etc.
Can I just jump in here? Can I just jump in here and say that as much as, we talk about like access, for example, that's always a conversation point when we talk about politics.
Yeah.
Fine. As recently as today, I was on a government website and the webpage didn't work.
Yeah.
So yes, it was a link. It was a link from one government website to another, and it's like resources for gender-based violence. But once you access that resource, the webpage is not found. And I found that happens with a lot of resources that you try and access. That happens with a lot of web pages. So we're speaking from a privileged point and saying, show us the reports. Then they send you the link for the reports and you open the link and the link doesn't work or there's no web page. What about the people who can't even access data? They don't even have a smartphone. They don't even have a cell phone.
Girl, we had a whole president give us family updates, family meetings during COVID on a weekly or however day, etc. Why can we not continue?
He do
so
that
he's shown us that he's capable of accounting. He's capable of taking the country into confidence. He's capable of bringing us up to speed with what's happening only when he wants to. So it's an issue of not want to. It's not an issue of capacity. If there are matters of national importance, come and address the people about it. I mean, even now, as you speak about performance management, consequence management is so important. My big issue with government, overspending, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, all of those things must be dealt with. We have an epidemic, we have a pandemic of underspending, where we have dilapidated infrastructure, things are falling apart. People will toy and protest over lack of water, etc. And there is budget that Treasury releases to a municipality or even province that doesn't ever get spent. And there's a rollover that money goes back to Treasury and nobody accounts. And I'm saying, why can you not speak if there's a problem with capacity and you're not skilled enough? National School of Government can train people. Treasury itself can train people. But if there's a component of eating, people wanting to steal money and they're lining up their friends, marama pepa wabo awahlangani, so they say, no, sizokuniga next year tender. 3 years, 4 years, 5 years go by without the money being spent because you're busy trying to line up your friend. Underspending must also have consequence management. Heads must roll. Right now in government, everybody knows, and at least now when I was still working for the state, everybody knew it was kush. You don't leave the government.
Very comfy.
No one is going to fire you. And until or unless you know that heads will roll for underperformance, we're going to stay with this problem. You're right. The technocrats, the bureaucrats.
100%.
As long as you know, are we down?
What is the purpose of then having the minister in presidency? Isn't that what the people are supposed to be doing?
Don't get me started.
Yeah. So I think maybe educate me on that.
So,
in my point of view, that's how I believe those guys should be accounted for. Those are the people we're supposed to be saying, what is your job? What are you doing? Because if you're the minister in presidency, according to me, unless I don't know.
But the ministers themselves can't even tell you what their jobs are.
Exactly. That's what I said to you. Everyone's freestyling.
They don't know
Yes.
what's going on.
So we're sitting in a country where we want progress, but we don't have the actual administrative building blocks to go forward and attain this progress.
Yeah.
So I'm asking for something small. I'm saying, why can't in the presidency we see all of the performance contracts of all the ministers, right? And what their key goals are for each quarter.
Yeah.
Because you're running a company. South Africa is a company. SA Inc. is a company.
True.
Then based off that, we can say, no, Mara, this guy said that they're going to have e-visas done in a particular thing. It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
This guy said that particular road will be done.
Yeah.
And it's part of the greater plan or whatever framework. It hasn't been done. That person is supposed to do this. When we get to that level of scrutiny, I can then be able to say, we can reward a minister to say, yeah, man, you've hit all your targets.
Yeah.
Chief, you get a bonus. Because the problem with this thing is that I don't want it to be one-sided.
Yeah.
I want to say, in order for us to appraise your work, if you do well, we will literally, minister got 50% bonus this year. The minister was getting 2 million, we gave him 3 million this year.
Yeah.
But minister didn't hit targets. So therefore, minister, your first warning is on. So it's clear, must be clear that you are employed.
But here's the thing, and remember, that's what I'm saying. Remember, we're coming from that oppression era, right? And everything is going. And I believe South Africa is running on that charismatic leadership style right now, right? And that's how everything is rolling. And then you'd find stuff like that. This is where you see the ministers going and presenting their budget to say, our department, this is the budget for the year. That's where everyone gets to question, oh, you said you're going to do this and that. That's our accountability structure as it stands.
Not everyone, by the way.
As
Not
it
everyone. There's a...
Yeah.
There's a website, I think it's called PMC, Parliamentary Monitoring, PMG.
Yes, something like that, yeah.
Bro, who reads that site? I mean, I read it. but think about it, right?
Yeah.
There are very few stories that come from that thing because that thing is not, it's not front and center, that's one. And two, we allow media to tell us what's happening in Parliament.
And we don't go for ourselves.
Trust them.
Yeah.
We trust media.
You're trusting the wrong person.
Unfortunately, and okay, when I say we trust media, I might not be including myself personally. But you spoke about the large marginalized group, right? A lot of the people in our country are in that marginalized group. So assuming that they'd have access to those resources or they'd be able to read those things and even reading them, yes, understanding them, question mark.
But remember, our media landscape now is also no longer the same. So we've got social media that is taking advertising spend. People no longer specialize. They no longer have a beat where they can sit on a story until they see it, to fruition. Right now, they're overworked, underpaid. There's the juniorization of the newsroom and a lot of things fall through the cracks. I mean, they're not holding people to account. We only go with the bandwagon of whenever there's a press release
Then
or
we say whatever
exactly.
we
We
said
just
there.
and they quote verbatim what the government department
rewrites,
is saying.
no
So and I mean
translation.
I say that with the greatest amount of sympathy for them because Naboshem is a lot that's going on. And but at the same time, I think it's so important that there's consequences. I can't stress this enough.
I agree.
Yes, you can put your budget. You're in the budget. That's what we're going to do, etc. What happens when things don't go according to that? Do you account? Are you held accountable? We can speak about Scopa, yes, but the actual minister in charge doesn't actually face the music. That's the first point for me. But the second and equally important one is that ministerial offices are now gravy trains, guys, if we're being honest. Firstly, we have way too many ministers, way too many. And the deputy ministers, some departments have 2 deputy ministers. Deputy ministers don't even replace the minister when the minister is out of action. If a minister is out of the country, or God forbid, has passed away, a deputy minister can't step up. What is their job?
What is the point?
Ministers in the presidency, responsible for women, etc., etc. We have social development. Why do you need that extra level? One that we have for planning, monitoring, etc. That's a DG's job. Why do we have a whole minister for electricity, where you have all these different? It's a waste. It is just a way of paying people back for the support that they've given you. It's about giving people blue, what is it called? Blue lights and bodyguards, etc. It's a waste. We can do with 10 super ministries, no deputy ministers. You have a DG that's in the office. Put capable DGs in place. Get rid of your deputy ministers completely. And then even the ministries in the presidency, you don't need all in sundry
more Indians,
to be there.
More Indians, less chiefs. People on the ground, literally.
People who are going to do action.
I think that's important because us often when we're talking about is democracy working, we have to look at the bigger picture. What's being stolen? What are we losing? This and that, holding ministers accountable. But we also need to remember that for the everyday citizen, it's things like not having water, not having electricity, not having access to working roads, safe transportation in their area. And so in holding ministers accountable, in them exposing what is required of them or what they plan to do in the coming months, how can the everyday South African who is faced with these problems contribute in that regard? Because it seems like a smaller issue,
I think,
in comparison to the policies and holding people accountable based on manifestos and performance contracts and all of that. How do we bring it down to a lower level?
Crazy statement, but change in South Africa is going to come from the middle class. And I say this from a realistic perspective. Outside of elections, outside of those moments of by-elections where there's tension, right? Whether someone will keep their job or not, so they feel like they need to do their job. Outside of that, the middle class will. And I say this because the expectation that somebody who doesn't have access, who doesn't have all these things, is going to find the information, find the will, find a way to get to this particular department and have the wherewithal to write a letter that's going to make people go, oh yeah, this is a problem, a sprayed or a force law. It's so much. There's so much between there and there. The middle class has to start becoming defenders of things.
I agree.
We have to. And the truth is this, right? The stratas, as it goes up, there are people above us who keep those people above them cushy. And we are closer to the people just above us, and we need to hold them accountable. And only when we make it untenable for them to feel cushy in their jobs will they suddenly start to think to themselves, maybe I need to do something today. It is a Monday. You understand?
I'm at work.
So we're sitting with a huge problem. The middle class has to get off their ass. I know it's tough, right? Because you've got so much to do. Remember how they keep us in check, all of us. You overwork the middle class. You make them just barely get by.
Exactly.
And they won't bother you. Because you could decide, when that be, that you want to do something, you want to start a civic organization. Where are you going to find the time, my brother?
None.
Where are you going to find the time? Look at the time now, and we're filming. You're working, right? You're trying to make means. When are you going to find time to be a secretary of a residents association?
None.
But we need to push through that and say to ourselves, maybe we take Saturdays off. Maybe we take Sundays. What are we doing with our Sundays? Because if we keep hoping and praying that things will get better, let me tell you, the people who do bad things, they are working harder than the people who want good.
True.
That's what's happening in this
That's
country.
true. That's true.
Yeah,
me-
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, no, go for it.
So for me, I think my fate lies in SMMEs, right? I believe in businesses more than anything, and I think
100%, I'm with
in
you.
this country, what we lack is upskilling those people to even like give them more spaces to discuss things on how to grow as an SMME. Because already, I think we've lost the space when it comes to working.
Yes.
There's so many, like, I don't want to talk about young people,
Yeah.
just work in general. As you're saying, the problem with middle class is that for me, when it comes to middle class, the people themselves, they've got a lot to lose than people.
Yes.
who are- like, the moment you think about, let's do something that would literally just swerve the system a bit,
Create a
they're like,
disruption.
nah,
Yeah.
I want to be in safe hands.
Yeah.
I want to be there.
The fear of moving backwards in life or getting out of the middle
The
class.
fear of not being
is-
able to pay for your
is
debit
more-
orders.
Yes.
I'm not debit order.
Stronger than the possibility
Your
of
credit
winning.
score. Oh.
This is what's happening in South Africa. I fear losing so much that I will be stagnant where I am, and rather than to move backwards, then
Exactly.
striving to win and move up.
And then we leave the job of emancipating South Africa to those who have
subcontract.
nothing to
We
lose.
subcontract our
Those who have
agency.
nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Emma Lokshin, they will bend. They, because they know, but I'm caught between a rock and a hard place.
That gives
What I
people
have is
ammo.
not enough as it is. So I'm willing to even let it go
Yeah.
for the sake of making sure that there's progress. And we as the middle class then continue as per normal. And I think I want to agree with you there, 100%. And equally to just stress the importance of civic participation in passing of legislation. Parliament all the time will do your community engagements, etc., before any piece of legislation is passed. But how many of us, and by us I mean myself as well, will say on a Saturday, oh no, they want to talk about the Bella Bill, and as a mom who's got kids and who's thinking about the future of their kids in education, I'm gonna go there and give my point of view. I don't, because it's a Saturday and we're doing things that
you're
need to be
like,
done on
you work the whole
Saturdays,
week.
soccer for the kids, etc. And then when it comes back and slaps me in the you know what, I'm quick to point at government to say, bayenza so, and we keep it moving. So one of the ways that we should be participating is whenever there is any opportunity for you to engage as a community member constructively in making sure that legislation is passed or not passed. Our job is to participate.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so Ayanda, you had brought up the formation of all these subcommittees and committees happening in government, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Council Against Gender-Based Violence that was established a couple of years ago. Not all of the funds have been distributed. Let's say maybe 40% of the funds have been distributed.
So sad.
But there was a lot of money pledged to that. There was 150 million pledged. I don't think that much has been done over the last couple of years in terms of remedying gender-based violence. And I think at every level, even if you do go report, because they'll encourage you to go and report your report, and then you're faced with another barrier. You get to the police station, they're not willing to engage with you as a human being. Or if you're a rape victim, you get sent back to go to your Kusela centers to go back to go get a rape kit here and there and go to the doctor and this and that. So what can government do better in, the upcoming elections? What can they do better? What can change? Because I think that through that council, we had hoped for a lot, but there has been very little evidence in the last couple of years.
Can I just say, gender-based violence and femicide in the country is a manifestation of a number of societal challenges that we face. We can talk about the history of where we come from, the migrant labor system where families were torn apart, the abuse on Black men where they had no outlet and they just, perpetrated that abuse on their families. We can speak about the empowerment of women and the lack of empowerment of men so that they can understand how to then coexist peacefully with empowered women. We can speak about how the education system has educated the mind but not educated the heart in terms of how it is that we shape this new country that we want to live in, where we are all healthy and we are not dealing with this current normalized collective trauma that we're in at the moment. So there's all of that, philosophical, historical debate that we can talk about. We can also then bring in the interventions on why we don't have specialized courts for the scourge that we're facing, why it is that certain centers were closed down, etc. And then we can speak about what I think is most important in this debate. both of the issues that I've discussed now are very important. And I think there's going to be more than just one intervention that's going to deal with GBVF in the country. But for me, this one is just as important, if not more so. When you have leaders in government who are male, and who are saying we will deal with the issue of gender-based violence and femicide. And those very same leaders in their rallies are the ones who are abusing young, unsuspecting girls, yellow bone, whatever the case may be, who are waiting for economic opportunities from these very men who with their lips profess one thing, but their actions do something completely different. When the men who are aspiring to those positions to the point where they even kill each other for council positions because they understand that this position doesn't just give you money, it gives you power, it gives you women and all that comes with it. When that culture is perpetuated by these men who are saying we're fighting gender-based violence, by a head of state whose nickname is Cupcake because of extramarital affairs, by people who are known to have beaten up women, but they are there in the National Executive Committee of this particular movement, we're taking the country for fools because we're saying with our mouths, we're going to deal with gender-based violence. Our actions tell us that we are the perpetrators of this very gender-based violence and femicide that we talk about. Nothing will change. You can throw the money at it, you can throw the police at it, but the culture that we're perpetuating, the culture that they espouse and that they're showing us is something that's completely contrary. We've changed the very fabric of our society. Relationships have become transactional. We're no longer looking at whether this person loves me, but we're looking at can this person give me money, right? So our value even as women has diminished to that point. And the men, the young men who can't afford the girlfriends at a young age, grow up thinking, mangaba namatenda, mangangena ku government, mangayenza so I will get that position. The one thing that this current government has done was rip apart the very fabric of our society. They're not doing anything for gender-based violence and femicide. And if you ask me, they are the root cause of the problem in this current dispensation.
So I want to actually just jump in. There's I believe two things that I was thinking about now. I hope I remember the second one as I'm talking. But one, for any problem in the country, data is a start. So when you first kind of brought this up, I was thinking to myself, okay, cool. The first thing we need to do is that we need to have a public-private partnership, right? That's going to create an online application that you can file your case of GBV on, or anything, whether it's rape, etc. You can file it, right? You can upload all the documents that you have onto that thing via your phone, and most people can do it, right? And for those that can't, there need to be stations. So it needs to be at a police station. There's this thing that you can
someone
do.
Who can
you
do
don't. I don't need to talk to Sergeant Mang Mang.
Just give me.
I can walk in. There's a station there. Boom, 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 boom. I upload my thing, and it's done. Now what that does is that dockets can't go missing, right? As a start, the docket is in. It can't go missing anymore, right? Secondly, we can suddenly now you don't have to. If you could, a friend with a smartphone can help you upload that doc, right? And more often than not, when you look at cases of things like GBV and rape, you normally will have a friend, a mother, a family member who assists you through that very first 24 hours, right? Which is crucial, takes you to hospital, etc. Let's literally digitize that process. You can't fake those things. Sorry, let me just wrap it up. Then the other side of it is that once you understand this, it'll tell us true data of what the problem is. There are X amount. Everybody's guessing. We're saying people aren't reporting enough. We need to make it easier for people to report from their phones, right? The other thing that we're dealing with in South Africa is a problem of, I want to say it's a problem of over-governmenting stuff, right? This is the problem that we have. If we have a problem and we have a problem with Gov, we should find a way as civic society to build these things for ourselves. Imagine if you could report a crime onto an application, that application then sends. It's already written in the format because we know what format they use at police stations. It's already in the format. It sends it there. Suddenly, all documents don't go missing. Now, what that suddenly does is that you can hold people accountable and you can track. For even a firearm, do you know that for firearms, there are private applications that track your firearm application?
Yeah.
So you don't need to go to government and ask them, hey bro, do you 1, 2, 3, 4? They have an app that does that. So a lot of things that we want to solve in our country, we are literally again subcontracting our agency as South Africans to government, and we need to stop. I don't understand why we keep doing the same things and hoping for different results. That's the problem. And when people say we pay taxes, and I say, sure, to a point, but are you going to keep saying that while nothing gets done? And if that is your stance, then I think you're in the wrong country, because you're going to keep complaining. I want solutions. So what is the solutions? If no one is doing it, let's do it. Let's put it together.
I think for me, just to come in there, let me talk about the system that you're talking about. I think the problem is that we're not putting enough pressure and information is not out there.
Yeah.
For example, what you're saying, it's exactly what IJS is about.
Yeah.
IJS was formed 12 years ago. That's what it's supposed to do. It's at this moment, it's supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that system was formed based on those things, that to be able to say, if you're reporting a crime, but if a person is arrested now, within 15 minutes, a court should be already in procession on how this thing's going to go, right? So we've got those systems. I don't think we're putting enough pressure on the government so that they can put them out there to the public so that we can consume and start putting our opinions on it. But then the thing is, all these things are there. Like, for example, with the same thing with the gender-based violence. On Pillar 7, on the ISP of the government, it's there. It addresses gender-based violence so hard. But however, there is no
ground,
tangible, like something that we can put into it. So all those things are there, like in paper. You can look at the Pillar 7. When you read the whole thing, the structure, the plan on how it's going to go, even the gender-based command center, it's supposed to be there and it's active. However, the ways on how we're going to move with this whole system is that there is no pressure that's applied so that we can get the information to people so that these things can actually work.
No one's accountable, bro.
Exactly. But they're there. The thing is, someone thought about it, but the problem is someone is not doing the thing. Or someone is not paid enough to be able to do the correct thing. Someone is doing something that looks like it's supposed to be like that. So my main thing on this is that all those things, we've been trying to address this, especially gender-based violence. Since 2021, that's where we saw the biggest impact into this thing. Because the thing is, the gender-based violence, it doesn't start here. How many of us have absent fathers? Like, it's one of the key things. How many of us have guidance as guys to say, this is the person who's my role model? Do you understand? So we don't have those things. We don't have principles in place besides the government. Us personally.
But I think it's also so deeply rooted in society though. You keep bringing up civilians doing something about it. But if we look at the stats show that women are the most disadvantaged in the country, Black women specifically at that. We are at the bottom of the food chain, right? So we are disproportionately affected by things like gender-based violence and, femicide, obviously. How does somebody like that now step up in a society that is extremely patriarchal in an election run where we have one number one candidate who is a woman on the ballot out of all these parties that are on the ballot? That's an embarrassment personally for me, considering we're 30 years into democracy and considering we keep driving this whole women empowerment conversation, but there's no tangible evidence of that in politics. Yes, we have our poster children here and there for these things, but I still think it becomes very, very difficult to create change with something like gender-based violence in a society that is so deeply rooted in patriarchy and where it's continued to be perpetuated in small spaces like in a grade 1, grade 2 classroom to somewhere as big as in government.
So I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge you to think about it differently. Women have the outright majority.
Okay.
So the conversation in the interim, right? So what type of conversations and actions will take us to a result? If you ask yourself that. So let me give you an example. Let's say if I was a woman, what I would do is I would try to say to myself, how do I create a network of other women that can then form a block? The things that move society is either voting or not voting financially. So for instance, you feel a particular person in some corporate company or whatever in society has committed this crime and has basically been found guilty, but nothing's happening to them. As a block, you pull out your votes as your financial. Let's say it's a person who has a petrol station, so no woman will pour gas there. I'm telling you, it seems so benign what I'm saying, but people and companies move when there is a consequence for things happening, right? If there's no, if you're a voting bloc, if you decide you want to have X amount of women in politics, form the parties. I'm literally not lying. Form them. It might take you 10, 15, 20 years. But in 20 years, if you formed parties that can contest, women can run the country easily. You have the numbers. I don't want to have a conversation around what's not going right. I want to have a conversation around how you can get it right. You have the ability to form stokvels. Most stokvels in this country are owned by women, run by women, and they're doing very well. When you are in those societal groupings, have these conversations. The Broederbond was built of people going to church and after church having conversations about how we run the country as Afrikaners. Think about that. We already are going to meet. Let's just discuss other things. So
Let's add another
so
topic
don't have whimsical discussions around things. Have a say. Oh, so and so, uyashaywa umyeni wakhe, what. Even if we're not going to march to the police station, we are going to literally make it untenable. Untenable for that person to exist in our society. We are going to, as abafazi balendawo, asimfune emicimbini, asifune, and this is what we're doing. We have become so desensitized and we literally tiptoe around stuff in everything we do as South Africans. We cede ground wherever we are as South Africans. And it annoys me because you sit here and say, women do have the power. And I'm not talking superficial. They literally have the power. You have the buying power, the voting power, the populist power. You have all these powers. Literally get into groupings together and discuss the things that will actually change things. So you already have the stokvel. The people that are in Stockville that want to do something, move them into a separate group and say, guys, here's in our community, we're going to have this thing, civic.
It's very optimistic.
Yeah,
though, to
I was
say
about
that.
to say.
You said
I was
if
about
I
to
was a
say.
woman,
Yes.
right?
No,
I understand where you're coming from.
now
I'm
you're
not
gonna-
negating anything
Yes.
you're saying. I completely agree. Groupings can work. Blocks can work, right? But let's look at a community like a township, for example, right? In my phase of the 3 blocks and all the women there, there's also men there, right? We have our society, our stokvel, or whatever the men also do. But now the issue is that it's not like the men don't know that mang wang shapa, ne? They know that my husband is beating me. But they still sit with him at the tavern and conversate with him. When he just came from the house, he just beat me and he left. It's at night, it's 10. Sharp.
Can I
Then
challenge you?
hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Then us as the woman, we mobilize, right? But his husband, all the husbands, they drink with this one man. They like him. It's their friend. I go and I stand up for my friend as a woman with 10 other women whose husbands drink with the same man. And then we must go back to our husbands who like this man. And our husbands are now targeting us as well, because we decided to make a stand for something. This isn't something that I'm making up from like, oh, this is just a story. No, this is reality.
Yeah, it's
People
reality.
are being ostracized for standing up. Women are being murdered for standing up against people in these small communities. And these things fall through the cracks. So yes, we can mobilize and try, and that is a great starting point. But some women do not have 10 years.
But remember,
What's the solution?
remember, when it comes to patriarchy, it's not just men who prop up patriarchy.
Yeah, women
There
perpetuate
are
it
women who prop up patriarchy
Sure,
as well.
sure.
They will come and tell you ukuthi thula mntanami sidla ngayo le ndoda.
Yeah.
Right? And they will come and tell you ukuthi kuyabekezelwa
Yeah.
emshadweni. Mosadi utshwara
Utshwara
thipa
thipa ka
ka bo-
bogale.
Yeah.
The stockful money I'm bringing now came from my
The
husband.
stockful money
Will you
ivela
give it
ku-
to me
Do you
again?
understand? So there are women also who themselves need a lot of healing and a lot of sitting down and talking
and
to as well,
empowerment before they can
who are
even.
perpetrating a patriarchy. And I think that's very, very important for us to understand and to know that to decolonize or to change and transform the way that we think is not something that is going to take us a day or two. And the interventions that we make in terms of technology, etc., are dealing with the issue downstream, right down the line. Once the crime has been perpetrated,
How do we
we catch
stop
the
the
people?
crime?
The question is, how do we stop the crime? And if it was as easy as just come together as a collective, as women, and make a difference, then we could argue that in South Africa, the black majority should be having economic economic power over the white minority. But
Why
30
can't you
years,
stand up and do
30
it?
years, they
I should,
But
they
we're
should.
saying, so if we're saying
Form
women,
blocks.
you have blocks, you have power, etc., take back the power, then the argument is, but you see, even as a race, as a people, where we're the majority, how difficult these
women's
things
issues
are.
are humans' issues.
Exactly.
They're
So
for
I'm
everybody.
saying it's not as easy as come together and you yourselves make a difference. I'm saying if we all come together collectively, I'm a firm believer, guys, and this might seem wishy-washy. There are three frontiers when it comes to our democracy and our freedom. The first one was political freedom, emancipation, the right to vote, etc. We've attained that, right? The second one is economic freedom. That's the current fight we're in now. We want to own the means of production. We want to own the wealth of the nation. Some are saying nationalize. There's the land issue, etc. That's where we are. But the third component that we are not paying attention to, and trust me, this we need to unlock even economic freedom, is the psychosocial freedom. The freedom of our minds, the freedom that we have in our community, the freedom to dictate what sort of people will we be known as. Will we still be the Rainbow Nation? Are we still a community of Ubuntu? If we're the rape capital of the world, how does that translate to what we're trying to build as a nation? That has been neglected. We've all just said, oh, praise the Lord, we're no longer under apartheid. Let's move into the sunset. Communities are traumatized. The current violence that we're seeing, there is no way you can tell me, Guti, it's just about a man and a woman. If someone is able to rape an infant, or ukoko, there is something that is wrong with the psyche of that person. And the problem is that these kinds of people are still being produced. People who produce these kind of acts and violent acts are a product of the society, of the community. It tells you there's a problem with the society and the community, and the state is not paying attention to that. We're not teaching people the right things to do and what we're trying to achieve in schools. My whole thing is we need to have a guidance counselor, we need to have a psychology in every school, and prioritize quintile 1 to 3 in particular, because our kids are traumatized. Our kids are living with rape. Our kids are living with drug and alcohol abuse. Our kids are dealing with gangs and violence and all sorts of things. We take them to school, then we say 30%. 30%. We then say, no, in grade 7, grade 9, and out of the system, certificates. Guys, there's a problem. There's a deep rooted problem. Even today, there are kids who are at Baragwanath, who are at whatever hospital that are being born right now. And when you see those kids there, there's nothing that says this one's going to be a rapist, this one's going to be a doctor, this one's going to be a lawyer, etc. Something happens between birth and the committing of that crime. And that something is what we need to come into and say, as a country, we need to shift that around. There is no way that one country can be known for rape. There is a huge problem with that.
Ending apartheid,
exactly.
It's overshadowed Nelson Mandela's works even at this point.
And so what we're saying is, oh no, once the crime has been committed, which is good, once the crime has been committed, here's how we deal with it. My question is, what are we doing to create people that commit this crime? What is it that we're doing wrong? And how can we correct that so that 20 years from now, we can say, hey,
I can come into
but now things have changed. What are we doing?
I can come into the curriculum of it, because we're mentioning like young kids, right? You can see even in playground dynamics that the boys know they have power.
Yes.
They know they're stronger. They know that they can get away with things. And
you
comes
run
from
like a girl.
home.
That's what people say. You run like a girl.
And not even
don't be a
something
sissy.
simple like that. But the boys feel like, oh, but she hit me. She pushed me. I can push her back. And they push her with so much force that she falls and she gets hurt. But it was just a little light shove, right? Those things come from somewhere. And I'm talking about kids who are 10, 9, 8.
Yeah.
This is foundation phase, just got to grade 4. So now if that's already happening at that age and there's so little I can do in the classroom as a teacher to discipline and correct, right? Because obviously now the state has changed, a lot of disciplinary rules, policies are different now. I mean, even suspending a learner for 3 days takes so much paperwork, so much admin, a hearing. So it becomes difficult to deal with the situation. Then you find out that this learner is coming from a home where there is abuse, or not even a home, but a community. You find out that your 10-year-old that is in your grade 4 class is actually in a gang back home where they live. How do you undo the works of a gang where they are for the other half of the day, because maybe there's no parent at home, or the parent works on weekends, so the kid is left to their own devices the whole weekend? And I'm not just talking about in our lower quintile areas, no. But you have your kids in your east areas of your cities, in the upper scale areas that come with the same kind of violent mindset into the classroom. Then you see the Glen Vista situation, where a child is so comfortable fist fighting a teacher, a high school kid. When we grew up, we feared adults. And not to say that we must be in that mode of intimidating children to a point where they're scared. But it's the fact that there's no
Respect,
education. The curriculum itself does not cater to this. The curriculum does not cater to gender-based violence topics. They want to adapt the curriculum now, and there's bills being passed. And the commentary, parents aren't for it because they feel like, we're going to teach their kids about sex and whatever. But where their kids are learning about sex is feeding into the way that they are in the classroom. It's feeding into the violence. It's feeding into the patriarchy. And you even see it in the way girls act with boys at a young age. They're already fixing themselves up to fit into this patriarchal mold that has been created for them. They already know what markers they need to attract men at a young age. How do you then now say that these are the people that must mobilize and make change? And then we must expect that change in the next 10 years. It's very difficult.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but we're not saying that those people in those schools need to be the ones that are trying this.
But shouldn't government be held accountable in terms of the societal experience we have?
No. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
We can't over legislate how people interact. We can't do that. Like how if I say terrible things to you and you feel some type of way, we can't now put a legislation as to how people, if we put the frameworks of the law around, right? To say this is our sandbox, this is where we play. And I don't want to have the constitutional conversation now because this is not that conversation, and how I feel about it. But we can't over legislate certain things and behaviors. And it's so true. Like the law could be there, but if I want to tell you that you're an ass, I'm going to say it,
That's
right?
hate speech.
But
The bill has been passed, by the way.
Leave
So,
that-
And the
bill has
legislation
been
must
passed.
hold you accountable for calling me an
bill has
ass.
been
And so what
passed.
happens now
The hate
after?
speech has been
but it
passed.
can't. We can't over legislate. The problem with us is that there are things that we should be fixing that we want to now legislate. We should be fixing amongst ourselves. But I don't want to go that way. Just hold the
Sorry,
thought.
I wanna come in as well,
Yeah,
ne?
I want to close the loop. My view on the educational thing is 100%. I'm with you. Foundational education is so crucial. The reason why the young kids that are being produced now don't have a sense of grounding to the country is because I was in school a very long time ago, and every day at school we used to, for instance, sing the national anthem. Like when I sing the national anthem, like I feel it. Like it's like I don't know how to explain it to you.
Pockets,
I don't know how to explain
whatever.
it. I feel it. When the national anthem is like, I feel it. Because at the time that it was there, it was a thing that we did every single
day.
morning.
Patriotic spirit.
Like it seems small. It seems like, but it binds us. Whether you're black, you're white, you're Indian, you're colored, you're whatever. The first thing before singing the class scene, we are there for assembly and we're singing the national anthem. It's a
Assembly happens
small
once every 2 weeks
thing.
now.
Yeah.
But you see, it's proving your point where you're saying, no, don't over-legislate things. Imagine now if you had legislation that says before you start every school day, everybody sings the national anthem for saints of patriarchy, etc., etc. But I want to then say you have to, when you see a problem as a nation, you have to, as the government, bring in guidelines that will help with normalizing the correct behavior. We had HIV/AIDS that was killing people left, right, and center.
And the
You
education
can't
was
stand back
bad.
and say, well, people can have sex with whoever they want to have sex
Yeah.
with. We as the state can't get involved because
Can't
that's
legislate
you
how they have
in
sex
the,
with each
you
other.
in the bedroom.
Sorry.
If you have 5-6 partners, well, hey, they had to come in with the ABC model that we actually adopted from Uganda that came up with that would abstain, be faithful, condomize. They had to say there's a problem here. Let's educate our people. And of course, you can't hold a gun to their head and say you must do 1, 2, and 3.
But having
they
that
had to put, they
thought
had
in
to
the
make
back
sure
of your mind.
we normalize the correct behavior. Firstly, secondly, things like infecting someone knowingly with HIV had to be criminalized.
Yeah.
Well, I can't now, as I say, anyone in my path,
Let's rock.
bazongazi,
Yeah.
then that has to be criminalized so that it's seen as a culpable homicide or whatever the case may be, attempted murder,
And that's
you name it.
legislating
That has to be
interactions,
legislated. Things like even like revenge porn, etc. You can look and say what people do between the sheets is none of my business. But if you see that it has an impact on society and the direction that we're taking and the trajectory of the country, you as the state must stand up and say, let's put the correct channels in place to guide behavior. Even if we're not going to be dictatorial about it and say, dush, 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 you're allowed only 2 partners or whatever the case may be. But there are sort of interventions that we have to put in place that will channel people into the direction of the future that we want as a country. We cannot be known as a rape capital. We cannot be known as HIV infection, highest rates. Even as we speak now, sub-Saharan Africa, young adolescent girls are the ones who are exposed to the highest rates of infection. And that's because of amablesa. That's because of
That's
the old
true.
men who are giving these children HIV, who then now, when they come of age, want to have normal relationship with people their age, but tell
they
abafana
can't.
now HIV. So that kind of behavior has to be regulated and normalized in a way that is responsible to say we can't choose for you your decision, but we can guide you as a state in the direction that we think we ought to be going.
I think an element that I can also add into it, I think we're underestimating the power of NPOs. And that's one thing that I know a lot of people don't have like the much care into it. But then you look at the projects that were there in the beginning of the first 15 years. Love Life Games, guys, like Love Life in general.
Buddies.
That was like an epic change.
Buddies.
South Africa.
Guys, do you understand how much budget that's needed into
There
this
was
NPOs?
investment in education.
There was investment into those things. Like you knew that each and every weekend there was something being done by Love Life. Do you understand? So those projects need to come back. Those are the things that can bring us
Weekend
back into the
programs,
community.
holiday
And I'm with you in terms of like sometimes we over legislate things. It's because we're not doing something on the ground. Something needs to be done before we even get to the legislation part. Those kids are suffering. And the thing is, they're not doing anything during the week. They're not doing anything during their school
When
holidays.
sport died in South Africa,
Sports died. Yo, I don't want to even
that's
talk about
when-
PSL.
That's when a lot of
Yes,
the social
yes.
ills that you see in our communities.
Exactly.
Sport is an integral part. I mean, I started at a government school fully, right? Before I moved to Model C school.
Yeah.
And I still competed and like fully competed in athletics and sports and whatnot. And I was living in the Eastern Cape. We would literally drive to other schools and go play. When they killed SASA, the original SASA to me was South African Sports, School Sports, something.
Yes.
That was the original SASA that I knew, right? So under 9, under 7, under 8, we would compete.
Exactly.
And that allowed for us to be busy until 5, until our parents get back.
Exactly.
So suddenly, you go to
Those things aren't there
communities,
anymore.
it's finished.
It's done.
It's finished.
They're not. A lot of schools
see,
don't
those
have
NPOs are
extramurals
dying.
at all.
Yes, there's no extramural.
Dusty grounds.
They walk back to the home.
Exactly.
They decide, hey, let's take a short ride. Let's chill in the corner.
Uh-huh.
etc.
Smoke.
That's the problem.
Yep.
Yo, guys.
I'd love to have that. The conversation around legislation is very. I want us to maybe come around to it because I just love solutions. When it comes to the economy, it's the basis that will allow for us to springboard a lot of the things that we want to do. And I always want to tell people when I'm on platforms around this and say, please go look at the South African budget. We have a serious crisis. We only spend less than 8% of our budget on things that can possibly grow our economy. Literally, it's a literal thing. So go to your budget and ask yourself, okay, so we've got X amount of trillions, right, that we're going to spend. But if we are only spending less than 8% on possibly growing the economy, are we going to grow?
Yeah.
Right? Not consumptive. I'm talking about capitalized. We're spending on infrastructure, etc. But the South Africa, what we're not doing as a country is we're not gearing ourselves up to be a trading nation.
Yeah.
We cannot keep passing the same 100 rand around, guys. It's the same 100 rand, right? The same 100 rand is to be cut up by a corporate, cut up by SARS, cut up by you, paying someone, etc. We need to export more than we are bringing in. Like, if we just understand that as a nation. I'm not asking for a lot. So the entrepreneurial stuff that you speak about is simple. How do we gear entrepreneurs to say to themselves, we are producing to export?
Exactly.
You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, no, you could do. So yes, we could do shoes, right? The shoe companies that have all popped up in South Africa. But what if we did shoes for other nations?
Exactly.
Like we could have the brand here, but how do we gear up
The brand
to now export into other countries in a massive way? How does somebody who has a coding university, how do we get them to start those academies in Windhoek, in Lusaka, in whatnot? We need to trade our expertise, right, in order for us to bring money back into the country. That's what we're not doing.
But also import substitution. Why are we importing things like a toothbrush or Ivaslap, etc.?
Chicken
Why
irks me.
are we importing
Chicken
chicken when we
Chicken
have?
irks me.
Do you know
When
what I mean?
the chicken
produce it here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That irks me.
Substitute that by creating things locally. Have your factories in the townships, in the rural areas, so that people are able to earn a decent living and income. That's the one thing. And then the second one, we keep saying to entrepreneurs, create jobs, etc. But electricity, safety and security is a huge problem.
I'm hungry. I'm
as
not gonna
well.
run a business.
Exactly. How am I going to run a business when I'm in the township and I'm saying I'm doing a car wash and there's no water, right? And there's no electricity when
There's
I'm
no
trying to
cars.
vacuum
There's no
Exactly.
cards.
So for me, the state has to be serious. You can't say, the township economy with one hand, and then in the other hand, you're the one who's making sure that the township doesn't have anything to create and sustain that economy. And even as the state, you should be saying the bottled water that we consume as a state must be coming from so and so in this township and that township.
But I don't want to have that. I
Right?
don't want to have
The
that.
plastic that is
That
made.
convo.
So for me, if we're saying stimulating the township economy or the local economy or industrialization, etc., we need to put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we're the ones who are giving,
Those things
people
need to become
Exactly. They have
compulsory
to be
then.
compulsory.
In these regions, while we're doing these regional elections, we need to see who's being elected. These are the people we need to approach. If I have a water business, I have a juice business, I know that there's going to be a conference in my area, I should be first point of contact, because why are you shipping water from Cape Town?
So
And I'm in
I wanna tell you-
Mpumalanga, and you can come to my house.
I want to
and
tell you
Mpumalanga
something
for
so
stock.
interesting around this thing, right? I want to give you a perfect example that literally clearly states how broken government's procurement system is. It's very clear. I saw a tender, right, from a municipality that's, I think it's actually in KZN, but like close to the Eastern Cape. The tender was for the renewal of a Zoom license.
Zoom.
I'm not playing. I promise you.
Like the
Zoom,
app.
The app. So you are tendering
You're getting a third party to come and
come
the go between you and Zoom.
a subscription. The CFO.
That you can just...
And
then
guys, who's
anywhere
gonna pay
else
for
you
that?
learn.
Who's gonna pay
No,
for
It
that?
comes back to the water thing, right? So the key thing that's broken here is spending up to a particular level. We are looking at the wrong contracts and tenders in South Africa. We are looking at the things that say 50, 100, 200 million, 1
look at the
billion.
small ones.
These little
are slipping
things,
through the cracks there.
these little things are what is leakages. These are the leakages.
Because why don't you have someone in-house who could
Because
do
why
that?
is this bottle of water 150 rand a bottle?
Exactly.
Right?
Thank
Why could they not have literally gone to a supplier, like you're saying, and bought it for $10, for $5, bulk pricing for $3 a bottle? Now, that thing happens because of the PFMA. There are things that we need to agree and say, yes, this thing, maybe I save into this thing. This thing's not working in this thing. Because you
Especially
can't-
for such,
you
yeah.
can't- Now I must go bid 70 grand to go literally take my credit card to literally just go renewal. I want you to, because remember, we've
Well,
Easy
well,
money.
well.
we've hamstrung ourselves, right, by saying government cannot procure anything. You understand what we said? We
Yeah.
said government can't go out and buy
Buy
as
things.
government.
Yeah.
They must get somebody else to buy. This is fundamental to government saving money. It's fundamental, right?
Making a lot of steps to spend.
Because remember, we're paying middlemen. We're paying middle. I produce nothing, but I've because I've written a beautiful proposal. Sometimes they're very terrible proposals. I've written a proposal. I've sent it through to Gov. They say, yeah, no, this guy, he can definitely supply this thing.
He's got
right?
expertise in
He's got
supplying water.
expertise. What? He supplied like 5 conferences.
Water
Then
supply.
I go to said company, water company, and I say, I'm bulk buying. Give me a lower price based off economics, and I have to ship this water in, and I make all these things. Suddenly, government's paying 150 rand for a bottle of water. Now, if there was one thing, just to close off this thought. I had a conversation, right, with the group chief executive of Transnet, and we had a very, very lovely conversation. And he said to me, if there's anything that I would love to have done properly by the time I leave Transnet, it is to digitize all contracts between 0 and 10 million. All of them. So in other words, a human is needed at the end. So you submitted your documents, and at the end it tells you only at 10 million rand, above 10 million, does it need a human. Below that, AI, digitized, it knows whether or not it checks references.
Yeah.
And then suddenly leakages are less because we look at the wrong contract. The big guys are fight for contracts, and they have to have the expertise. They have to have the thing. It's these
Those
little
water
boxes.
and the
It's
platters
food to
for
a
the
prison.
event. Yeah.
But I'm not catering.
Grass
I've never
cutting.
done- Exactly.
Yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that. I think that something to close off on. We've spoken a lot about education, right, and people mobilizing, doing their part. And in the previous episodes, we discussed the voter youth apathy a lot, but I think now voter education is important. Yes, we are very close to elections now, but we have the 2026 elections coming up. We also have smaller initiatives in politics that keep going,
Yeah.
right?
That need participation.
That need
Yeah.
participation.
By-elections.
So how do you think we can encourage young people to access educational resources, number one, and also encouraging them to engage in these initiatives that arise in their areas, whether it's at a local level or it's at a national level? Yeah.
Ironically, I think I'm going to contradict myself.
Considering limitations to access, ne?
I'm gonna contradict myself and say we should probably legislate for a percentage in parliament.
How
to be used.
cho me kwena venu?
No, listen.
Can't legislate
legislate
everything.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
I'm not
I agree with you.
I also agree.
I agree with you.
I'm not legislating.
Even on the ministers as well.
How people interact. I'm talking about the structure of how we run our society.
Okay.
I agree
So
with
I'm
you.
saying
I agree with you there.
old people will not allow young people to get in. They will not allow, because the same thing for women was key. We said 50%.
Yes.
And
we
that's
produced
how
the 50%.
we produced it.
That's
So
true.
if we want young people,
that's very good.
We must have a
Yeah.
legislation for quotas.
Let's legislate. Yes.
I love this point.
25 to 30% in
I love
parliament.
this
We're
point.
tired of backbenchers.
Amen.
So
Absolutely.
they must know that
Yes.
when they're picking their list, it's
Forces.
Think
Yeah.
I was looking at
There must be an
the
age.
candidate
Yeah.
list,
There must
the
be an
full
age.
candidate list.
Ubani unangaki? Bathi,
Unalady.
Yes,
Unalady.
thank you.
Someone.
Thank you.
Asingeke simfake kule.
Yeah.
But singamfaka lana, but umama usibanibani fanele simkhiphe.
No,
Yes, maybe
fine.
ubaba usibanibani
Half
must
of it.
also be out, because we must have, if we've got 100 people who are sending to parliament, 25 must be below 35.
But that's even a small number, because
but
I was
that's a
looking.
start.
It's a
but
start.
What
It's
that
fair.
does, what that does, is that suddenly the youth can see themselves being represented on
And
there.
it being
Can I-
compulsory. Just to jump in
Yeah.
and say that the candidate lists, there's a lot of
Hey,
70s,
that thing's shady.
50s. Why is someone
Sad,
born in
P.
56
Sad.
on the candidate list? You're gonna wafetsa no. Mara batlotoma no. That doesn't make sense to me.
So, in the wise words of Common featuring John Legend in the song Glory,
Hallelujah.
uthi ke ubrother Common,
Brother.
no one can win a war individually. It takes the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy.
Yeah.
I agree with you fully.
Yeah.
You have to have that element of young people. Young people have that thing in reckless
Yeah,
in
that chaotic
zeal
spirit,
nyana,
you know?
as a fact
Fact
checker,
checker.
but also they have a vested interest in the future that you want to create.
Yeah.
We'll be
Because
here
old
for
people
it.
will be singing Amakuku very soon.
Yeah.
But they are going to be there and they have a stake in this future that we want to bring. So you need them there. Yes, you need one or two golden oldies for institutional memory and for them to guide, to say this is how it's done. But you also need that vavavoom of the young people who will hold everybody to account. I agree with you fully that there has to be a quota that's there. Representation matters. But also the reason why I love, your new parties like Build One South Africa, there's also been Rise and a number of others. I have to actually say that Build One South Africa was the first to come up with this model. It has since been replicated by other parties and we welcome that. But this model of saying we're not going to go to your branch general, we're not going to go to conference, and then so and so must emerge, based on how many votes you bought or your surname, when now you've got a historic surname, etc. What they've done is they've said, we want people in the community. So if you've got a youngster who is teaching arts and drama in the community, nominate that person.
Yeah.
Let them get 1,000 votes to be a candidate, and Build One South Africa will give you an opportunity to run for provincial candidacy or even national. And we've done that, and we've seen incredible people. I mean, in the West Rand, one of my colleagues, Cynthia, energetic, vibrant, tiny, but powerful, passionate, driven, a young person with that energy, with that zeal, and with a proven track record with her own money. She's been able to do community projects for years now.
So with
So
state
that
funds,
person
she'll run
must
with it.
represent me in
Yeah.
parliament.
Yeah.
That person must represent me in the provincial legislature. And that for me is the beauty about new emerging parties like ours, is we have then said, gone are the days where you must now go be in there for years for you to be considered. You must shine someone's
limits.
shoes.
Term
You
limits.
must be
Term
drinking.
limits.
Yeah, You
Term
must be
limits.
drinking scotch, for you
Term
to be
limits.
able to get there. We're
Term
like,
limits.
right now, if you are doing the work on the ground right now, you can go to parliament right now.
Yeah.
Based on the work that you've done, not based on what and you're emerging because you're driving this one's. Youth League, for example, has been used for point scoring, where they're saying, no, this one must be the president of the Youth League because he's driving agenda and all those things. No, we're saying young people must see themselves in parliament. They must see themselves in provincial legislature. And in 2026, they must see themselves in the councils. And they do that by joining political parties that will give them a platform immediately
Let me-
you having to bribe
To
or
work
nice.
Let me just close it before you come in.
Yeah.
So remember, if you do 25%, that's 100 young people in parliament. But then that 100 must go to provincial legislature, must come down to the city, must come down to the municipality.
Come on,
Suddenly, I've answered your thing.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of young people.
not just a little
so
bit,
suddenly,
yeah.
you know a 23-year-old who's sitting as an MMC.
Come on.
And
right?
someone who had the same issues
Because,
I had
because they
Oh,
must.
in my real
They're-
life.
They're cornered. You've got to corner people. People are not going to act the way that you think they should unless there are rules that force them to do a
Yes.
particular thing. Specifically when it comes to the public sector. We've got to say to them, yes, we want to put all of these things. But now that list, it says, about 10. Hey, almost 3 must be below 35. You're forced. You're forced.
So now you have to look in places you generally
and
wouldn't.
then 50% gender parity. Eish,
Come
it's a corner.
That's right.
Forced to transform.
Here's another point into it, right? There's a children's parliament that happens every year.
Yes.
And I haven't seen any political party attending those.
That thing's a gimmick, bro. Let's be real. Let's be
But
real.
here's the thing, as much as it's a gimmick, right? I feel like if political parties were present in those things, they'll be able to pick up someone. Like when I look at you, 2 years ago, there was a girl. I'm like, this girl, wherever that girl is, she reminds me of you. Like you're. But the thing is, those people, you see them and they emerge.
Yeah.
There's that 1 year where you see people like, oh, okay, there's people, there's potential here.
Yeah.
But then they end up nowhere. So that's the thing. We need to empower. I agree with that. I'm just saying that there's processes.
be a pool
It could
from
be a
which
pool
you draw.
to say, from
Yeah,
school,
that's
where do you
true.
go? Because the
That's
thing
true.
is, as much as you want to say, we're young people, who are we putting there?
Hey.
Who's young enough to say, are you going to run for president?
Me? Never.
See, do you
But a
understand?
young person.
Do you understand?
Wow.
Do you
Young
understand?
person.
Young
So-
person.
No, because I'm too. I've actualized and I understand what I need to do in society. My role is there are people that need to be inside Pagati.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you need the agility of people outside
Absolutely.
who have the same common vision and patriotic stance for the country
Absolutely.
who can do the work. Even if you are president, deputy president, or whatever, you've got little room to move around and maneuver. We need people-to-people exchanges at a global level. That when we say we're going to things like conferences, UNGA, UNGA, we're going to COP, whatever, you've got young people who can get to the... Because people-to-people is how things get done. When those ministers meet and they leave, there are DGs that must still combine from one side. There are ministers that must still talk to each other and do stuff. Once we've said, we're good with this country. So we need... people inside that want to change and people outside that want to change the country.
Okay, so sorry, let me answer your question. Let me
Okay.
answer your question. Sorry. So just to say, in terms of educating, right? I think for me, social media is the way to go because I've seen the amount of people that go viral on TikTok. And one thing for sure, we don't have a lot of you. That's what I'm saying. You might not see yourself as like a person who's capable of going to that. But when we look at social media, you look at people, how many people are actually educating other young people into it? How many people are doing like content on politics? You will see after the reactions, the funny stuff. However, the educational side of it, we're lacking there. So what I'm saying is that we need to also penetrate that space.
People are very
I
shy
understand.
to
No, I
be
agree with
critical, I've noticed. People are shy to critique people
Exactly.
because they think it'll come back to bite them. Going back to your point of people having more to lose. So they say less because they have more to lose.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, guys. And to our viewers, I think what we can take away from this episode is to do your reading. Find out what the issues in your area are and how you can mobilize towards those causes. Make sure that you're holding your local politicians accountable as well. Make sure that there's some kind of task list or to-do list that your community can have to see whether or not the job is getting done. And make sure to vote in these upcoming elections.
Definitely.
Thank you.